I really don't understand any of that, and I have received quite a lot of backlash on posting this book on Instagram because there's so much girl power in there. Hi everyone, welcome back to another book club episode. This book club episode is already, I think, number 9. Crazy. This time I do have 5 books for you. Again, I'm sorry that last month was just 4. I'm trying to keep up the speed, but it is hard sometimes. Though you will see soon why I have managed to complete 5. Because this month's books are... let me just grab them. These ones. So let's start with the first one. The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. I think we all know who Rupi Kaur is. She has written beautiful poems, and one of my favorites, I think, is Milk and Honey, which I don't own. I have to get it maybe for my birthday, actually. It's a good idea. But this one was also heartbreaking and beautiful, and I love the illustrations in it. The Sun and Her Flowers is divided up into a couple of categories, and these are wilting, falling, rooting, rising, and blooming. Because there are a couple of different categories, and depending on how you like to read poetry, I personally like to see what I'm in the mood for and then read those poems and let them reverberate through my soul. But maybe that is a completely different strategy than you have. So depending on what kind of strategy you have when it comes to poetry, there is something for every single mood and vibe. I already said that I love the illustrations. Let me just... like, this is so sweet. But also there are a couple of really powerful ones in there, such as... this book has everything. I personally think the poetry is so much stronger when it is combined with illustrations, art, something like that. And she has done this perfectly in The Sun and Her Flowers. So if you haven't read this one yet, go do it. If you haven't read Milk and Honey, then I also highly recommend that one. And I am gonna put that on my birthday wish list. Thank you for the indirect reminder. Then the next one is a completely different book, and I have received quite a lot of backlash on posting this book on Instagram. This is Fragility by DiAngelo. This is written by a white woman. That is why I got a lot of backlash. And obviously I understand that if a person would read only white authors when it comes to racism in particular, then the image that you're getting might not be realistic. But this is just one example of a book that I have read on racism. I'm reading another one at the moment, but thank you for all the concern on Instagram. And also, obviously, if you have any book recommendations regarding any kind of topic, please leave them in the descriptions, and also make sure to follow me on Goodreads. The link is in the description below. This book in particular is very interesting to me because the writer actually gives workshops on diversity and racism on the work floor. She uses a lot of experiences and anecdotes from her workshops in this book. And that was very interesting to see because there is so much hidden racism on the work floor. White people might think that they're not being racist, but this book shows you that most white people are being racist. That is why I really recommend this book, among others. I'm just gonna completely cover myself in after all the backlash, I'm sorry. But among others, I would recommend this book to you. It's not that big. It's a fairly easy read, but it is interesting. Like I said, because she gives those workshops and implements all those stories into this story, it makes it much more valuable. I would love to know from you which other book I would read on racism. I'm just looking at my books. I'm about to start reading So You Want to Talk About Race. This was the second book. Then the third book is completely different, and if you're not new to book club, then you know that I read a lot of different genres. This is the first fantasy book and also the only fantasy book of this book club. Now, this book was the cover is beautiful. This book was so amazing. There's so much girl power in this book, and I absolutely loved it. This is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renée. The book is about a king who takes a different bride every single night. The next morning, by dawn, the girl is dead. A lot of his citizens, for obvious reasons, dislike their king. And one girl in particular, she has lost her best friend to this exact activity. And she decides to volunteer as a princess, as a bride, and kill him instead. However, things turn out to be completely different because there is a backstory to why the king is taking a different bride every single night. And they obviously obviously also fall in love. However, they're trying to find a solution to this kind of curse together, and it is really lovely. The setting of this book, I'm not sure about. I would say it is an Arabic country, but I am not sure. It is obviously also not set in this world because it's fantasy. This is the map of where the book is taking place. If you love fantasy, I finished this book in about 5 days. It is not a complicated Sarah J. Maas book. However, it is really, really enjoyable. I also read kind of more Eastern European fantasy stories, but this is more an Arabic fantasy story. And if you might be interested, then I can recommend this one. I am looking forward to reading part 2, which I have not ordered yet, but stay tuned. Quick coffee break. I made coffee with a different coffee machine today, which you'll be able to see in my vlog that is coming live next week. I'm just inspecting all the aromas that I'm tasting. Yeah, I think this is coffee. Apparently I can now make filter coffee. Okay, next is... That is why I was able to read 5 books, okay? Sorry, I'm not sorry. This book is 1. Super cute, but obviously the story itself isn't cute. This book is written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It is called We Should All Be Feminists. You might have heard of this author and or the topic through her TED Talk, and basically this book is the TED Talk. So it talks about her growing up in Nigeria and experiencing sexism there and how she was labeled a feminist, and obviously first thought that that was a bad thing, but in turn slowly learned that she is a proud feminist and that it took her a while to adjust to that title. And in this tiny book there are lots of experiences of sexism and feminism, mostly or all taking place in Nigeria, and it was just really fascinating and painful to read. And I would just like to read the back of the book to you because she has written it beautifully. I would like to ask that we begin to dream about and plan for a different world, a fairer world, a world of happier men and happier women who are truer to themselves. And this is how to start. We must raise our daughters differently. We must also raise our sons differently. So, if you're interested in feminism and if you have more recommendations for me on feminism, then please leave them in the description below. Superficial side note, I borrowed this from a friend and I love this, so I'm gonna get it for myself. Okay, last but not least is an author that you may have heard of before on these book club series, Dolly Alderton, Ghosts. This is fairly bigger than some of the other books. Dolly Alderton is the author of Everything I Know About Love, which is potentially one of my favorite books ever, and the book club that I talk about that book has now been linked on the screen. This, however, is not a memoir and is actually a story. Let me just read the summary of the book to you. Nina Dean has arrived at her early 30s as a successful food writer with loving friends and family, plus a new home and neighborhood. When she meets Max, a beguiling romantic hero who tells her on date 1 that he's going to marry her, it feels like all is going to plan. Obviously, that is not the only thing that is happening in this book. Nina Dean has a loving family, but unfortunately her father is slowly starting to develop more and more dementia. And I don't know exactly what ghosts is referring to. It might either be the ghosting of the guys from the apps or her dad, or maybe a combination of both, but she is in her 30s, in her early 30s, one of the only single ones left, childless, and that is obviously a sin. How dare you be a woman without a child and a husband? And this book is about her struggles in obviously wanting to find a partner, but also being and staying true to herself, then also taking care of her father, being ghosted by Max a couple of times, working on her friendships, and it is just a lovely read. It did make me feel a bit sad at some times because of all the ghosting. Like, I really don't understand any of that, but besides that, I think that it is just a very true, realistic representation of life. And the thing that I really enjoyed about this book as well is that it was all set in London. London is just one of my favorite cities in the whole wide world. So that was very fun for me to kind of dive into that again, as we're not able to travel right now. Yeah, for her first non-memoir book, I really enjoyed it. This isn't normally really my cup of tea because it's either like more serious books or fantasy, but I really did enjoy this, and I have a couple of more British authors on my want to read list that I don't have the books of yet, but I'll try to get them soon. Again, if you have more recommendations, then let me know. This is also the last book, so I would like to thank you for clicking on this video. Don't forget to subscribe and see you next week, Wednesday, for a new video.